Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Turf Moor. As you can see from Pad's screen there, that is our view of Burnley Stadium for this afternoon's encounter between two winless teams in the Premier League. We will get the team news with you just shortly. We've seen the Norwich team come around the pitch. They're actually, if Pad will just spin the camera around for me, they're actually in the far corner to where they usually would be in their dressing room. Just that corner there where there's kind of a glass building, so to speak. That's where they are. And they have kind of walked all the way around the pitch to get into there. We've seen a few players, and I guess there's a few decisions for Daniel Farke to make. I'll bring in a jubilant Paddy Davitt, who's delighted at the news that his team Coventry are currently beating Fulham.
It won't last, Connor. It won't last. It won't last.
Ever the optimist. What are you expecting today, Pad? I again might have to cut across you as we're sort of in the team news, but if you were to sort of lay it down and make predictions for what we're going to see this afternoon from Daniel Farke, what would you go with?
Well, I think myself and Dave did the show yesterday evening, and we felt contrasted with Everton, same shape, probably 10 of the 11 as per, and maybe the only debate is Giannoulis in, Brandon Williams out. We won't give too much away, but I don't think that's going to be too far from what the 11 might be when it drops imminently. So looks like Daniel's going for a bit more consistency in approach.
Sorry, Pat. I will cut across you. Norwich City team is in one change. Dimitris Giannoulis replaces Brandon Williams. Same formation as we saw at Everton last weekend. So it's a 3-5-2 for Norwich City this afternoon. They've got Tim Krul in goal, a back three of Kabak, Grant Hanley and Ben Gibson. Max Aarons as the right wing back. Dimitris Giannoulis as the left wing back. Midfield three of Pierre Lees-Malou, Matthias Norman and Kenny McLean. And a partnership up front of Timu Pukki and Josh Sargent. The bench looks a bit like this. Angus Gunn in goal, Andrew Omobamidele, Brandon Williams, Lucas Rupp, Billy Gilmore, Kieran Dow, Milo Rashica, Adam Ida, and Christos Scholis. So I think that's probably as we expected, Pad. I'll just try and bring the Burnley team before we come to Pad. I can see the team sheets getting passed around. It will be inevitably a 4-4-2 for Burnley this afternoon. Just waiting for my phone to load. Here we go. So Aaron Lennon, thanks, mate. Aaron Lennon makes his first Premier League start of the season for them, and a big change at the back. Nathan Collins, who they signed this summer from Stoke City, is in ahead of Ben Mee. So they line up a bit like this. Nick Pope in goal, former Ipswich Town Academy graduate, I believe. Lowton, Tarkovsky, Collins and Taylor is the back four. Lennon, Brownhill, Westwood and McNeil is the midfield four. And they've got Wood and Vidra up front. Their subs, Hennessy, Norris, Cork, Beardsley, Peters, Long, Goodmanson, Barnes and Rodriguez. So there's the two teams this afternoon. Pad, I think your smile's going to be even bigger because it's currently 4-1 now to Coventry against Fulham, which is quite remarkable. But let's get your thoughts on that Norwich City team. One change as you kind of tee up there. Is that a surprise? Given, I mean, we saw obviously last weekend's performance has probably dictated this for Brandon Williams, but given it was Dwight McNeil who was facing today, and we all saw how well he did at Arsenal against Nicolas Pepe, is there a little bit of surprise from your perspective that Daniel Farke has made that change?
Yes and no, I think, Connor. I think you referenced the Arsenal performance. If Brandon Williams had maintained that level of performance, then we're not talking about Giannoulis coming back in. He would have retained his place, but he hasn't really. Ultimately, he's fallen away a little bit. Not massively, but not enough really for him to be, undisputably the left wide defensive option in this team. And I guess if you're playing the three, then there's more of an onus on those wing backs to get forward. And we talked again yesterday with Daniel about getting a bit more support into the same front two, Pukki and Sargent. And one thing you will say about Giannoulis is that is his strongest suit going forward. You saw it most recently in Liverpool's game in the League Cup. He does offer a bit more than Brandon Williams. He's naturally left-footed, so he offers that balance immediately. He's not constantly looking to cut back in field where there's too much traffic, as Brandon Williams was at Goodison last week for me. So if you've got that defensive protection behind him, then it probably does tip towards Giannoulis because Williams hasn't put his stamp on the position. And surely if you're Giannoulis, having been dipped out after Man City and your head coach coming out and not singling you out or scapegoating you, but making it quite clear that that wasn't of the required standard defensively, then you've got to be desperate to make a positive impact today. And it might just suit him this shape. We might start to see the Giannoulis that, is clearly a very, very good player, linked with Roma in the summer, playing for a top club in Greece and a Greek international. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, I think, accommodating him within a three. I mean, if it was a back four and you're asking him to be defensively good, as good as he would be going forward, then you still have concerns, I think, from what we've seen of him in a Norwich shirt. But certainly going forward, if Kabak and Gibson, obviously the massive onus is Gibson as a left-sided defender in that 3-2, offer Giannoulis that protection and almost license to get forward. And there's another guy, I'm sure we were going to come on to him. He won't lack the motivation here today after a pretty sour 2 seasons or so under Sean Dyche. So as long as Gibson is on point defensively, because I think one thing we will know, I think you referenced it on the drive up, Burnley aren't going to dominate possession. I think they had 30-odd% possession at Leicester last weekend. That isn't the nature of their game to have a lot of the ball. So Norwich will get decent spells of possession. And if they do, then the balance of Giannoulis on one side, Max Aarons on the other, that could be a key facet in what we hope will be a far more positive outcome for Norwich in terms of the result. So, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring him back in for this type of game.
Yeah, and like you say there, the shape may well help him because, as Carl says on the comments, much better at wing-back, arguably. I think the major question marks around Giannoulis, not just this season, to be fair, there was some in the Championship last season, was around how good he was as a defender. This wing-back system maybe negates that need a little bit. I remember coming here to... it would have been a couple of years ago now, wouldn't it? And Jamal Lewis was playing left back this day, and he was in front of a pretty unforgiving crowd in the stand that we're sat in. So maybe Daniel Farke going for slightly more experience with Giannoulis ahead of Brandon Williams there. You kind of teed it up nicely, Pad. So let's come on to that back three. There's probably 2 players in there that are going to share some criticism today, certainly from the home faithful. You obviously got Grant Hanley, who made lots and lots of appearances for Blackburn, came through their academy, obviously local rivals to Burnley. And then you've got Ben Gibson, as you say, who was once a record signing in these parts. Didn't work out for whatever reason. He's moved on. They've signed Nathan Collins, who comes in today. And whether that will offer Timu Pukki and Josh Sargent a little bit of a glimpse of goal, we obviously hope that to be the case. But 2 players there for different reasons that may have points to prove for different reasons. But it feels like a big afternoon for both of them. I think that's fair to say. Grant Hanley's had a lot of criticism of his own this season from some quarters of Norwich City fans, and Ben Gibson's obviously been in and out. So both will be really keen to deliver positive performances here today and probably prove a few doubters, both amongst their fans and amongst some of the Burnley faithful who are going to be here today, wrong.
100%. But I would narrow it down in terms of those 2. I think it's about, in Hanley's case, the Blackburn link, obviously, and in Ben Gibson's, we talked about it, the Burnley connection. No, it's more about in what has been a very uncertain, hesitant start defensively for Norwich. Not just the back 3, 2 centre-backs, the whole of the back unit, and that includes defensive midfielders. It just hasn't worked consistently enough in any of these 6 Premier League games. So, for me, the context is, if you're a Hanley, you're a Gibson. Off the back of, yes, okay, it was another defeat at Everton, but in general play, they looked a lot more solid. If they're solid again today, and the result comes off the back of that, then moving forward, it's important for those 2 players, because you're right, neither of those, I think it's safe to say, for various reasons, have established themselves earlier in their careers as Premier League players. Yes, they're in the Premier League now, but are they Premier League grade players week in, week out at this level against some of the best strikers in the world? The jury's out on both, and it's going to take probably a season of consistency at this level, both as individuals and Norwich as a team, before you could probably definitively answer, yes, they are Premier League quality defenders. So it could start here today. It could start here today with, looking at Burnley's team news. Chris Wood is obviously a focal point, massively important, huge aerial presence, scored here in the league meeting 2 seasons ago. We know how they're going to play. We know how direct they're going to be. We know how much of a threat they're going to try and be on set pieces. So if that is all a given, then Hanley and Gibson have to play very well. And if they do, with Kabak alongside them, and they give Norwich that solid defensive platform, then after a lot of sort of gnashing and wailing of teeth about can Norwich defensively be good enough at this level, we might start to feel, yes, there is evidence. Because if you can come to Burnley and withstand what they're going to come at you with, and go back down to Norfolk with a result, then for me, they're starting to answer the questions. Yes, they can, as a unit and individuals, defend at this level. But make no mistake, they will need to be absolutely on it today, because we all know how Burnley will set up, and under Dyche, they will be looking to probe for any fresh vulnerability, and they will look to, in the right sense of the word, try and bully Norwich and bully those centre-backs if you're Chris Wood. So, yeah, Gibson and Hanley and Kabak, let's throw him in. Those 3. If Norwich are going to get a result, there's elements of what has to happen well, and clearly one of those, very close to the top of the list, is those three central defenders have to play very well.
Yeah, again, just to go back to that game 2 years ago, which obviously a lot more, the context is different compared to what it was today. Norwich had bounced into this one having just beat Manchester City, and what Burnley did so well that day was press Norwich pretty relentlessly and really pin them in. And it looks like the inclusion of Mateo Vidra alongside Chris Wood, it has been Ashley Barnes for large parts of the season so far, which suggests that Sean Dyche is looking to replicate that formula today. So it may well be up to Norwich's three centre-backs to move the ball in a good way. I saw Harry Elliott's comment. Sorry, we'll come to score predictions in just a moment. Pat, just to finish off with them, before we go to how you see this game panning out, did you see enough last weekend out of this formation that suggests Norwich City are going to create enough openings for that front two, Pukki and Sargent? Because ultimately it's going to be about getting service to them. That flat midfield three is going to have to support that. Do you see enough in this Norwich City team today that is going to provide them with enough of a creative spark to score a goal at least, even if before we move on to talking about the result?
Well, I think it goes back to the first discussion point, which is Giannoulis' inclusion. He will, because it's his natural game, get forward, offer width, get balls into the box because he's a natural left-sider. He will look to go outside their defensive fullback right side. So if he does that, and Aarons, for me, continues where he left off second half at Everton, because it was noticeable both him and Williams, I think their starting positions were a lot higher. And as a result, Norwich's best spell in the entirety of that game was probably from half-time to, well, Kenny McLean stumbles on the ball, if we're truthful. And within that, there was another important facet, and you touched on it. They need a bit of drive from midfield, central midfield areas, and Matthias Norman provided that. Boy, did he. He was almost pulling the strings at one point in that second half, testing Pickford from wide areas outside the box. So, yes, is the long-winded answer. I think if that happens, if Giannoulis and Aarons are progressive and Norman's able to break forward with Lees, Maluma, McLean offering a bit of protection, if he does do that, then you would think there is that support network for Pukki, for Sargent. But the onus is on those two as well. You know, no lack of effort at Goodison, I felt last week, but really, I'm struggling to think how many. I think Pukki had a shot towards the end, but there wasn't too many other opportunities in the box for those two, and that will need to change both today and moving forward. Because you're right, at the minute, the focus is tilted to can they work on the defensive side of the shape, but ultimately it won't be just defensively resolution that will keep them in this division. They need to carry a threat going the other way. They've stormed to 2 championship titles, really. With that wasn't even a debate, and we know there's certain players have moved on and new players have come in. But I think there's enough in this starting lineup, and also worth referencing, and we saw it again second half Everton. You've got Rashica, you've got Jolis on the bench, Adam Eder as well if you want to throw him in. There are options, attacking-wise, to inject a bit of dynamism if that's what's required. But I think first and foremost for me today, it is fairly boring, but it is about can you stop Burnley? If you can stop Burnley, then I think there's enough in this game for Norwich that they can carry a threat at the other end. And, ultimately, they're going to have to, because it won't. But I don't think they can come here today and just think with the mindset of let's just keep a clean sheet, let's just keep Burnley at bay, because if Burnley get ahead of steam up, it's going to be very difficult to do that. And this crowd get up behind them as well, and the balls start raining into Tim Krul's box. They need to give them something to think about going the other way. And again, at the risk of repeating myself, if Giannoulis and Aarons can get on the front foot and push their respective wide players back, then you start to see a path to Norwich being able to threaten Burnley at the other end of the pitch.
Come on then, Pat, how do you see this one going here today? It's raining. It's probably weather that you'd expect to encounter when you come to Burnley on a Saturday afternoon. As glorious, of course, as it is, I can see a few yellow shirts now beginning to make their way into the away end. Are you hopeful that, or say hope? Well, maybe hope's all we've got at the moment. But you're hopeful that Norwich can get the first points on the board this afternoon.
You've got to be hopeful, Connor. Surely, I mean, it has to tip in the right direction at some point. And worth reiterating 2 things. Burnley, well, you might say, and it's been said earlier in the week, we put the tweet out along come Norwich, but 13 home games yet to win. That's an incredible record for a Sean Dyche Burnley team, because you think they would be very strong at their home fortress. But that also, on the flip side, tells you that teams have come here and had some joy. And the other thing is, the league table would tell you they yet to win a game, and they're marginally better off than Norwich, but only by a place and a point or so. So they're not exactly setting the world alight. So for those reasons, combined with if Norwich can build on the positive elements of what we saw last week, I think they can get a result. We said we did a bit on the Instagram page on the drive up. I said 1-1. I'm going to stick with 1-1. Throw that back to you, Connor. Let's have it.
Good man. Yeah, as I said on the Instagram Live, I've just been having nightmares of how this game plays out in my head, and I'm hoping that Norwich can break the cycle and break the narrative around them at the moment, but just struggling to see how they contain Chris Wood's physicality, and Mateo Vidra, I think, is a nuisance at this level. So, look, I wish I could go in your direction, but for balance, I'll go for a 2-0 defeat, and we'll see what we get this afternoon. Pad, thank you very much for joining me. Of course, Binken.com, the place to go. We've got our colleague Dave Freezer, there you can see him there, on the live blog this afternoon. There's your final look at Turf Moor, of course. There's been a lot of talk around a certain special agent this week. Let's hope Norwich City avoid 007 by the end of this afternoon. Thanks for watching.